Hi everyone, and welcome to yet another episode of Junk Journal Joy, which is a series on my channel where I post the process videos of all the junk journal spreads that I create. Now, some of you have obviously been following the series for quite some time on my channel, so you know that the prompt for today is going to be yet another mini collage that I made during the 100-day challenge in 2023. This was the collage that I made on day 3 of the challenge. And today I'm going to create a companion page for this collage in my journal. Now, I have already done my homework and I've collected everything that I could find in my stash of supplies, which could fall under the themes of vintage, romantic, fantasy, as well as some dark academia. And I'm basically trying to go for a mix and match vibe over here, where I can take a lot of these different elements from various themes and sort of make it into a cohesive spread. I definitely love some pieces out of everything that I have collected, and then there are others which I'm just honestly trying to get rid of because I've had them for too long and I don't seem to use them in different projects. So so one of the reasons why I also wanted to make this spread was to basically finish some of my supplies which have been lying with me for a very long time. So as you can see over here, I'm just going with some larger chunks of paper, and these are all basically combinations of textured paper, printed paper, ephemera that I've purchased, or stuff that I've cut out from magazines and newspapers, and also some bits that are left over from previous projects. I definitely wanted to include a few more roses over here to go with the overall rose vintage vibe that was happening on the main collage, which is why I was also purposely looking for pieces that have old love letters or scripts, or just, you know, giving the feeling of pressed roses or dried roses which are preserved. So I was trying to basically find that kind of stuff, and luckily I did have some elements in my stash. Once I was somewhat happy with the layout on the left side of the page, I decided to glue everything down, because once I commit to a few pieces, it helps me to move forward. Otherwise, I just keep playing with the layout back and forth and then I just never proceed. I think that happens to most of us. So I basically do one round of layouts and I try to experiment with the layers, and once I'm somewhat okay with them, then I proceed to sticking them. And that still leaves me a little bit of room for exploration and discovery later on, because I don't stick it all together like very tightly or like very permanently, so to say. I do sort of leave some pieces loose and I try to apply the glue as lightly as possible, so that there is still some leeway over there, or still some possibility for me to possibly fit in another piece under an existing piece, or maybe remove a layer and then do some experiments by just adding or deleting pieces. And then in the end, I eventually like stick it all together once and for all. Like I stick it down really hard, like I press really hard on the journal, and then I stack some books on top of it so that it's permanently glued down on the page. But it's always a good idea to commit to some pieces at least, so that we can move ahead and then just move on to the other side of the spread, so to say. One of the things that I really like to do when making my journal spreads is to keep cutting off the excess as frequently as and when I can, because it really helps me to define the edge of the spread. I know that there are a lot of people who don't like to go back and forth with the scissors so much, and they like to cut out the excess absolutely in the end. And that's a good way to go about it too. But honestly, for me, if I don't cut off the edges, it makes me very uneasy and I cannot seem to figure out where the edges are. And once the edges are clean and I know exactly where my paper is ending, I am able to balance out my composition much better on the other side. At this stage, I did feel a little bit of a block because I wasn't sure how many more elements I want to include in this page. I thought that I should finish off the details over here, but then another part of my brain said that I should first finish off the other side and then come back to the details. So I went a little back and forth in terms of how I want to proceed. But there was one thing that I was absolutely sure of, and that was to place this rose sticker, which I think sort of brought everything together, and it just basically was tying in all the pieces and totally giving off the vibe that I wanted the page to give, which is a vintage romantic spread with a little bit of like a dark academia vibe, and also like a few rustic retro pieces here and there, as you can see. But yeah, I definitely wanted to add that rose. So that was one of the things on my wish list which I managed to add over here. Then I started playing with the pieces on the other side of my composition. Honestly, when it comes to layering pieces in a junk journal, I try to look for as much contrast as possible, because when we're collecting ephemera and scraps from so many different sources in daily life, it's not easy to match them in terms of vibe and theme, but it is definitely easy to match them in terms of color and contrast. So the goal is to basically create patches of light and dark elements in your journal so that the viewer's eye is able to travel much more easily, and they're able to move from one piece to the other, like all these scraps and bits of paper and pieces that you have put on your journal. They're able to sort of enjoy the beauty of each piece individually, rather than all of it getting like, you know, smushed together in like one confusing web, and rather than all of them sort of losing their independent charm by just merging and blending into each other. So it's important to add these little dark pieces of paper here and there, because you're sort of able to create the separations between different ephemera that you have. And so basically this is also one of the reasons why I like to add a lot of solid elements, you know, as small pieces here and there in my journal, because again, they give your eye a little bit of relief and sort of like a negative space in your composition between all the other text heavy or print heavy pieces. So hopefully I made some sense over there. Sometimes when I'm doing these voiceovers, I tend to yap a little bit, but hopefully that made sense. And yeah, so once I was somewhat happy with the placements, I decided to glue everything down. I love adding vellum wherever possible because it creates this beautiful translucent effect where you can see the layers under the paper as well, underneath the vellum paper. And in case you're new to using vellum, then here's a quick tip. You basically need to use glue which is acid free and water free when it comes to sticking vellum on paper, because it basically activates or basically the crinkling of it activates anytime you put water on it. So it starts to crinkle up and it basically buckles and becomes like this crumply paper if you add water. But if you use glues which do not have water in them, and basically they're not liquid glues and they are like these sticky glues which are acid free, then you're able to stick the vellum a lot more easily and then it just stays put. So I basically use two different types of glues, one for the vellum and one for everything else. The everything else is basically stuck using regular PVA glue or craft glue, and this one is really cheap. It's called Fevicol, which is a brand easily available in India. Once again, it was time to cut off the excess because that would help me understand what more to add towards the edges, and especially if I want to add washi tapes, or maybe if I want to add corner elements, or something like if I want to bookend my design, like if I want to balance out my composition on the left edge and the right edge, then this basically helps me to identify the edge. By nature, I'm a slightly maximalist person, which is why I like to layer my junk journal spreads quite heavily with as many elements as possible. In this particular case, I'm adding so many little details with these small circle stickers, with semi-transparent stickers, creating this translucent feel. I'm also adding text stickers, then I'm adding vellum, I'm adding pattern paper, and so much more. So yeah, by nature, I'm a maximalist. And so I like to really spend time on each of my spreads looking for ways to beautify it more or layer it more, and basically add like these tiny details in whichever corner possible. So that's what I'm doing over here now. And then as you can see, I've also added a tiny coat at the bottom. And finally, I'm reusing the photo corners, which I had removed earlier while removing the collage from the journal. So I'm just adding glue at the back and reusing these photo corners. The photo corners are actually self-adhesive. So when you buy them in packs, their first use is actually pretty easy because you just have to take them out from the sticker sheet and then they're good to use straight away. But in this particular case, I'm trying to reuse them, which means that they have lost their stickiness quite a bit. So I'm just adding extra glue at the back so that I'm able to stick them again over here. And yeah, that is my journal spread for today. I honestly love the way this has turned out. It's actually come out much better than what I had imagined initially. And I'm so glad that I have a lot of material still left, which means that I can create another companion spread for this companion page. So I can basically maybe create like twin journal entries. And yeah, if I do that, then I'll definitely post a video over here. You know that I will. And totally, absolutely love the vibe of the way this has turned out. If you also loved watching my process, and if you'd like to keep watching more of my videos, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel. And I will see you very, very soon with another video. Bye.